All right. So I'd like to welcome everyone back. I will be picking back up. You'll now be hearing from Cheyenne.
Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to move on to the part a lot of people are here for, the findings. And the way we have organized this session is thematically. We'll go over the 5 areas of interest one by one, starting from education. And all of the findings we are going to present today are taken from 3 different resources. So our initial observations from the analysis of outcomes and information gap, and then the discussion we've had in the focus group, and finally, the results from the preliminary results from the 2021 Community Vitality Survey. And before getting into the findings, we want to show you the demographic information of our 2021 Community Vitality Survey, which was conducted between April and June of this year. We have recruited a total of 704 participants who are currently living in Quebec. And we have slightly more female participants than male. In terms of age, 47.3% of our participants are between the age of 25 and 34. So we do have a slightly younger sample, but we also take this as an opportunity to hear the voice of our youth population in the community. And although we have both English and French version of the surveys available, we asked participants which linguistic community they belong to. And 64.9% of the participants identify with the English-speaking Black community, 27% identify with the French-speaking Black community, and 8.1% of the participants identify with both language communities. Slightly more than half of the participants indicated that they are bilingual, and this is true across reading, writing, and verbal communication proficiency. The last piece of demographic information worth noting is the generation status of our sample. There is a significant difference between the English and the French community in terms of the generation status in our sample, such that 66% of the English-speaking Black community sample are third-generation Canadians, while close to 70% of the French community sample are first-generation Canadians. Therefore, we have controlled the effect of generation status, gender, age for the findings we are going to present today.
Thank you, Cheyenne. And so, as Cheyenne was mentioning, we're going to do this kind of chronologically by starting with analysis of gaps and then getting into the focus group findings and then finally the survey findings across each thematic area. So we start with, so I'll just say that, if anyone has seen a Black in Quebec presentation over the past year, you'll probably be familiar with some of these results, but at least you'll see some of the new findings from the survey. So the first place we started with education was looking at high school rates of attaining high school diploma or less. And so what we found was that the English-speaking Black community is the group with the highest percentage of the 4 subgroups being observed, including the French-speaking Black community and the linguistic groups of the linguistic groupings of the non-visible minority community, French and English. Across these 4 groups, the English-speaking Black community was the one with the highest percentage of its population who hold a high school diploma or less. And then when we looked at this ages specifically 15 to 29, it seems that this difference is almost a bit more magnified amongst the youth. It's more magnified amongst the youth. I just wanted to kind of come back to the top slide because I also it should be noted that the group with the least with the smallest percentage is actually the French-speaking Black community, with the non-visible minority communities in between the English and French, in particular in regards to high school diploma or less. The next form of educational attainment we looked at, I mean, there are more. This was just a bit of an overview and a bit of a summary of our findings. So there is more detail we can offer, such as CEGEP, but we jump into university degree at the bachelor level or above. And from as of 2016, from the data from the census, we also saw that the English-speaking Black community in Quebec had the lowest rate of university degrees at the bachelor level or above. And similarly to the last slide, this difference also seems to be a bit more magnified within the younger segments of the population, those aged 15 to 29, with only 8.7% of the English-speaking Black community within this age group holding a university degree at the bachelor level or above. That's less than half of the biggest percent of the group with the biggest percentage, which would be the English-speaking non-visible minority population in Quebec. When it comes to focus group findings, we've just kind of arranged the main points that were brought up. Some of these were brought up more as identifying challenges in the community. Some of these were brought up more as a solution, more as an identification of a potential kind of solution or kind of what path we should head in if we want to address some of these changes. So in the realm of education, people we spoke to identified issues with encouragement and motivation. Our Black youth, particularly being discouraged or demotivated. This idea about stigma with education, the sense that if you don't have a high educational attainment, some people are kind of scared to talk to other people or to express themselves. And it also works on the flip side. If you do have high educational attainment, hopefully it doesn't lead to like any sense of snobbiness or like thinking that your understanding is more superior than other people. So we're trying to kind of erase the stigma to get people to not really be upset or stigmatized by their level of educational attainment. Lack of access to resources was another thing identified, and even lack of education about Black history and identity within the schooling system or even at the university level was identified as a challenge. Ultimately, a lack of research about the experiences of Black people in the education system in the Quebec context was pointed to. And people were also mentioning issues with French proficiency and level of French proficiency. And so, right off the bat, one thing I'll say that's very important to keep in mind is that we're a diverse community. We have the people who we interviewed also came from diverse backgrounds. Not everyone sees things the same way. Not everyone agrees in terms of what the challenges are, which is absolutely fine because we are diverse and we're hoping to hear different perspectives. So these are just some of the things that came out that seem to have some agreement on. When it came to solutions, people were interested in suggesting that more should be done when it comes to learning about the relationship between education and employment. It's not as simple as you go get educated and you're going to get a good job and everything will be fine. There's so many things that influence our economic outcomes as well that we should learn more about. Encouraging civic engagement, community development, and discourse, specifically and particularly between older people and younger people in the community. There needs to be that connection and that shared dialogue and understanding. Teaching the community about the structure of the educational system more widely so that parents, students, community members are more informed about their environment and the institutions with which they're sending their children to. Creating centers and spaces for extracurricular education and support. And trying to explore the positive benefits of online learning. There's also some hesitation and some no one is really sure about the long-term kind of effects of this transition we've all kind of been part of over the past year. But whatever kind of positive things that have come out of it, they wanted to say that, let's see how we can exploit it and make use of it. Lastly, it's also encouraging the growth of mentorships, encouraging the growth of role models and people in the community who can serve as guides to others.
And from the first slide in the education, we can see that in the 2016 census, the ESBC seems to be facing gaps in the educational outcomes compared to other subgroups. So in the 2021 Community Vitality Survey, about half of the participants, and that's 47.6%, had bachelor's degree or above, and 32.5% had college, CJET, or other non-university certificate diploma. And when looking at both their educational attainment and their parents' educational outcomes, we do see that our participants from the Black community achieved higher education than their parents. And in the survey, we also asked participants about their educational aspirations. So that's what would they like to achieve, and educational expectation, what they think they will achieve. Our survey has found that members from the Black community, their actual educational attainment is much lower than their educational aspiration and educational expectation. When we break it down by the language communities, we see that members in the French community have their educational attainments come closer to their aspiration and expectation. So that means members in the English-speaking Black community have a bigger gap between the educational attainment and their educational aspiration and expectation. And we will talk about the mentoring and networking in the sessions of economics. From the focus group that we've conducted, there's concern about encouragement and motivation in pursuing education. Therefore, in the survey, we look at what are the reasons for the Black community members to choose their program of study. And what we found is that many people agree that they chose their program of study because it's meaningful and important. They also agree that their programs of study is fun and interesting. And people tend to disagree with the statement that they are not sure why they're studying this. So in general, it is a fairly positive and autonomous motivated profile in terms of choosing their program of study. When seeing how their career motivation relates to the work satisfaction, it turns out their motivation of seeing the study program as fun and interesting, meaningful and important is related to higher work satisfaction. And furthermore, even extrinsic motivation, so that it's you are doing something for others, it predicts positive work satisfaction for our members in the community. So perhaps doing what one's parents want is considered volitional for our community members.